Yoknyam, for that recap, and I think we just go straight to question and answers. I've dropped it in the chat. Dear participants, you are free to unmute yourself. I've enabled that to unmute yourself and to speak to your question. We would actually love those who want to speak to the question first, so that we can be able to have this as a conversation. And it can be in any order. As you know that our speakers are still here, and we have listened to them round. So we can take up Dr. Peter Osimiri. I think you dropped something in the chat. We're so glad if you can hear your voice to speak, to address the question.
Thank you. Farinola, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir, we can.
Thank you. I want to thank all the speakers. At some point, I think it was when Dr. Abiono was about running up. Now, the question for this question is for Dr. Abiono. We did say that hold our leaders accountable for the way they use our natural energy resources, and even if we cannot hold them politically accountable. And I'm wondering, is it possible to hold them accountable for the way they use up our energy resources if we still have authoritarian states that are not democratic? That's the question. The second point I want to raise, I think this is more of a contribution and a question. You see, when I used to say that as a Lagosian, you have to become a philosopher by all means. In other words, to become an urban philosopher, when you begin to know the kind of challenges, environmental, that you face, living in Lagos. Now, one of the things I found about Lagos is that the problem of Lagos, it's a much more bigger problem. It's actually a national problem. When you talk about climate change, about environmental degradation and all those, other problems, you notice that they are highly connected to the whole expansion of human population in a city like Lagos. And I discovered that the reason why you have a lot of people, want to come to Lagos is because of the economy in Lagos. I think Lagos has almost 50% of the entire economy in Nigeria. So it's happening in Lagos. So everybody wants to come to Lagos. But I think the part of reason is because, again, there is we have a number of ports in Nigeria. Most of those ports are not operating. They're not really functional. But the one in Lagos is working. And that means that a lot of businesses come to those ports, a lot of goods, a lot of commerce is taking place in Lagos. But guess what? We have just built one port somewhere in Lekki. I think that's the Atlantic City. There's a port there. There's a new port coming up in somewhere around Badagry. And I'm saying that if you build more ports, you're going to increasingly overpopulate Lagos, and that will also complicate the environmental challenges that we're facing. I think that's where I want to stop. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peter.
Yeah.
Yoknyam, over to you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Peter, and that was a great question. Could any of our presenters please briefly respond to his observation?
Yeah, thank you very much, Yoknyam, and thank you, Dr. Peter, for the question. And so the first one, that how do we try to hold our government accountable in the situation whereby non-democratic attitudes appeals to them the most? And to be candid, that's a very important question, and sometimes it takes me to that what we have seen most times in African societies is that the very freedom that should be right in the front when it comes to democratic participation is not there. Free speech is almost clamped down, and it's making it difficult for us to get our voices to the right places when it comes to trying to hold those who are bringing us to these environmental challenges to account. But one thing that I've thought about in the past months is that there is this recent issue about consumer activism, and I think we should also learn a cue from that very idea. Consumer activism is the idea that consumers need not try to go violent when they are trying to decide on the kind of products that they need to use. Rather than going violent, they can just go through a boycott of consumption. And let me apply that idea to the issue of our government officials. To be candid, we realize that they are trying to censor Africans, or those who are vocal about their excesses. But I think this is the age whereby a whole lot of media is open to us to speak about the ills of government. And I think our consumer activism can be directed in so many ways. One is we don't just need to hold our government officials accountable when it comes to seeing them in motorcades and the houses that they have built. We also need to tie all of those actions to how it has encouraged climate change, global warming. That is, having so much cars, of course, ultimately would mean that you are multiplying your carbon footprint. And so by the time we are writing about all of these things, in terms of activism, I mean, trying to be vocal about it, we need to also try to direct their attention to how their carbon footprints are being multiplied. And this can be done through so many ways, not necessarily the violent means of activism. We can write about it. We can also try to point the attention to all of those things. And also, the consumer activism needs to be adopted in the terms of the goods and services that we have been using. These are times when we can also boycott certain goods, certain products that seems to have contributed to global warming in their production. That is, we have to think about how they have produced certain goods and services in such a way that it has been able at least to maximize the use of environment. Goods and services that have used up our environment, we should have a way to boycott. And of course, our activism can be done in a manner that it does not incite violence. And for the second point, of course, it's just a comment. Of course, we realize that Lagos and the kind of structures that we are seeing here and there, of course, it's more or less like it's building up itself, setting up itself for the worst of environmental despoliation. And that is a critical issue that we all must always try to think about. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Abiodun. Anyone else, please, from the panel?
Yes, if I may just say one or two things. It's obvious that Lagos is highly populated, if not overpopulated, and we're really on the brink of, exploding, so to say. I don't know when last any of you were in Lagos, but to commute between a distance of, let's just say duration of, 15 to 20 minutes, 30 minutes within the express takes like roughly 2 hours. So I work in, there are quite a of names that are from back home here, and I will just use the places, maybe you can relate. I stay on Aja axis. I work in Lekki Phase 1. Ordinarily, it will take me less than 30 minutes maximum of minimal or no traffic to get there. But because of the amount of traffic, I have to wake up way earlier, get up and leave the house at about 6 a.m. to be able to get to the office like 8 a.m. or thereabout. The population is massive. And I came across a piece that talks of how the population keeps piling up on a daily or per hour basis. There's a master plan and someone was able to capture that data. So, but what we're saying from my own point of view or from our own work we do is for people to begin to walk the talk. And one exciting thing about academics is that they do all this gymnastics most of the time and they pile it up on shelves and they do the activism with all due respect to my doctors and all of this. So, but then I want the getting people work with us. That's why we do the kind of interventions we do. get to reach to schools, get to communities. We were working on the first of its kind bike park, where you get communities, because from research and the work we do, people found out that one of the reasons that discourage people from cycling, everybody cycled or at least loved cycling as a kid. I can't wait to get my boy on a bicycle too, so that we get to work on the environment together. But at some point you stop. Why? Because the roads are not safe, or you think what do you call it? Some reason, class reason and what have you,
Exactly.
to not cycle. And we've tried to make it attractive. But the point is, we want to get people to be able to walk the talk. So we'll get to the communities, bring the bike park to people that you come with your family, park your car, you use it less. And Lagos, I must commend them. They are really doing a lot of work. It's not their fault that they are, or our fault that we're in a coastal part of the world, that things are working and then the people here are working. But then they are making efforts to. The non-motorized transport policy has been in pipeline for the past 4 years or so, with United Nations and the Environmental Program and other international agencies coming to get it to work in the policy level. But the people have to make it work. And I will say that right now, the whole policy is seeing the light of day, and action is about to, sooner or later, as I expect that cycle is going to be on us, you'll see that more people have the opportunity to cycle, bringing cycling to school children, bringing cycling to estates. Because when the infrastructure exists, people can now be encouraged or motivated to want to do it. And I tell you what, on a very personal and health level, whenever I cycle, I feel rejuvenated. The what do you call it? The endorphins or what have you, all those things in biology, that it gets moving and I feel relaxed and life is more. So we need to begin to walk the talk. That's the summary of what I'm saying. In as much as we do publications, let's try to see how we can attract funders. I guess you have research and funding for you in the academics to do some of these things. Locate persons that you can scale up with, and there are a lot of things coming up, because right now there's a whole shift. It's a new normal. People are now trying to change the way of doing things from, it was Einstein that said that we cannot solve a problem by thinking the way we thought about it when we landed in that problem. So it's a whole new normal, and there's this green industrial revolution that it's catching, at least it's catching within the sphere that I work. And I just encourage us that we need to walk the talk more. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Denny.
Yeah, if I can just add to that. So I would like to, first of all, like while I was doing some basic research about this talk, I looked at for some policy documents. Okay. Out of all the states in Nigeria, Lagos seems to be the only one with a climate action plan in the whole of Nigeria. So if you remember while I was talking, I mentioned about having a top-down climate action plan from the global level to the national, to the state, even to local government. In developed countries, even at municipal level, council level, they have climate action plan. So that is important. And I think Lagos is on the right track in addressing these climate issues that we have in Africa. Having said that, I also want to say that the problem we are having in Lagos could also be traced to planning issues. So the foundation of Lagos was, the Bible says that if the foundation be destroyed and the righteous, it's a very difficult issue. The planning is a mess, from the scratch. Now, the reason why I say that, and I think it's important, is there are some comparable cities to Lagos. For example, Hong Kong. I'm just checking out the land mass of Hong Kong and Lagos is almost the same. Of course, we can argue. I look at the population density of Lagos, around 6,871 persons per square kilometer. That's for Lagos. Hong Kong, about 6,300 persons per square kilometer. So they have several similarities. Hong Kong is a coastal city, just like Lagos. Okay, but one thing that you will notice in Hong Kong is, number one, they have this sustainable transport system, whereby a state, a city, just as Lagos, would have about 100 metro stations. So in fact, you don't need to buy a car, because you are the target of the government is every 5 minutes, there should be a metro station within a 5 minute walking distance, because that's sustainable transportation. Mm-hmm. So if we can imbibe this kind of mechanism in terms of housing, the planning, of course, Lagos needs to go vertical, because we cannot discourage people from coming into a state because of overpopulation issue. The job of the government is to see how we can accommodate these people. We have so many cities that are bigger than Lagos in terms of population. How are they coping in the global north? So I think it's about planning, and I think it's time for government agencies to, especially in terms of planning the city, the climate dimension, the environmental perspective, sustainable transportation, like Mr. Daniel has been talking about, is important. So if we can address the planning issues in Lagos, I see Lagos thriving, given that they are even ahead in terms of climate actions. In the future, I think it's going to be a wonderful state.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Toby. That's an insightful response. And thanks to all our other panelists for responding to that question. I think the common thread that I'm thinking that might be in all of your responses, class. Because part of it is you want, and I think actually this goes especially to Mr. Dennis about cycling. When you're encouraging, what are the maybe not incentive, but how can we make it attractive to young people, right? And not only that, because bicycle is associated with poor people, and also how for the young people who are trying to be maybe like boys, right? They want to be the big boys in town. Big boys don't usually carry bicycle, right? Big boys, how are they going to carry their babes on their bicycle? And the babes might not even want to be on a bicycle because they will see it as beneath them. I want a guy with a fancy car. So, and even generally speaking, people, adults don't see people who ride bicycle as people that are worthy. You want to be a big guy, you get big car. So how do you make that? Maybe this question even goes to other panelists. How do you make caring for the earth really attractive to everyday people, that this is we have an emergency in our hand, we need to deal with it?
Wow. Please pronounce your name.
Pretty good. By the way, I'm Nigerian.
Oh, fantastic. Great. So that's a very beautiful question, because how to make this, and that's part of the innovations and all that is going on right now in the sector. By the way, have you heard that cycling is the new golf? Go and try and get a carbon bike and know how much it costs. Go and try and buy a helmet and try to kit up as a spandex rider, just to make sure that you insulate yourself from any potential road hazard like falling off, and you know what it costs. There are bikes that are up to £2,000 or dollars and what have you. So it's about awareness to an extent. And just last week, we were talking with my superior in the office, and we need to get ways of disseminating information to people in very nice, slides that they could assess and begin to have a change of mind. So it's really, really a genuine concern on an area to really be innovative around. I belong to a couple of fora that are international, that we're thinking of innovations in our sector to make climate action plans attractive, because really and truly they are not. And for most of this conversation, we've narrowed it. Perhaps I made it that way because of the little we're doing. We've narrowed it to the transport sector, but there are a whole lot. You need to see what waste is doing in Lagos. You need to see the oceans and the seas, and you need to see what a whole lot of other sectors, other emitters are doing. But I decided to bring it to where I know that I have some concrete, action within the sphere. So there's a whole lot of work to do, but we're really leveraging on technology and innovation to make it, how to you see it there. And then another thing is security, and then like I mentioned, perhaps you didn't get it, is the infrastructure, which is not within our own power that are the off-takers, but those who have the power to make things happen, the government. So if you have dedicated cycle lanes that connect students to schools, then you see, instead of getting, like in Lagos, I keep talking about Lagos where I live here, and this is where the reality happens. When it's off school season or when schools go on break for like a week or two, the roads are a bit freer. There are lots of buses taking students to school, doing school runs, parents or guardians. So it makes the roads even much more congested and stuff like that. But when you have, what we want to do is if we can get a research done of the number of persons that could ride on a day or that ride on a daily basis, and then how many more could ride when you have dedicated lanes, students riding to school, people riding to supermarkets, and taking, you can make it attractive when you have trees and shades over that. It takes a while, but that's why these timelines are not something you want to achieve in 2025. But you don't want to achieve because it takes a while for trees to grow over a path. So yes, we could make it attractive by awareness. We could make it by leveraging on technology and other innovations from the academic, and perhaps other contributors might actually suggest some other ways too. Thank you.
Thank you.
For me, I think yes, like you said, education is important. When you hear about something from there's some knowledge that you gain from when you're in primary school that still sticks to you, that form the way your habits and your attitude to things. So if you can do some catch them young, especially we know that probably some generations ahead of us might be difficult to have this paradigm shift. But we have a generation at hand that are still at their cradle age. So how can we influence this young population from the primary to the secondary? How can we imbibe this knowledge into them such that they naturally would take action? The action is environmental friendly, just naturally. And having said that, I think it's important that we increase our literacy level on the continent as well. Yeah, if we, there is no way how can I communicate climate change to my grandmother who is in the village, who didn't go to school? So we need to, our literacy is one of the reasons why the Global North is ahead of us in terms of climate awareness and action. So we need to improve our literacy level, which will help us to communicate this idea better, and people will, and also technology as well. We need to, leverage on technology. For example, in some of the cartoons that these children look at, our coming generation, there is some sense of environmental friendliness in these cartoons. So different means of creating this awareness, education can be imbibed such that eventually the entire population of Africa will be climate aware and would eventually be conscious, environmentally conscious of when making decisions and choices. So yeah, that's what I would like to add to that.
Thank you, Dr. Toby.
Yeah, if I may add just one thing, and I think it's just very much in line with what the previous speakers have said concerning that environmental consciousness is key. And in connection with what Mr. Dennis said, bicycle riding is very helpful. But then when you look at it, you consider our own situation here in Nigeria. Take Lagos, for example, go to our campuses, and you think about it. In Europe, of course, most of us would have noticed that bicycle riding is an attitude on campus. Lecturers, students, they take upon this attitude. And if you think about bicycle riding outside, on the streets, on the highways, as a little bit risky, how about on campus? How about places where the risks are less, and in fact, it is even much economy-wise for you to even take upon such actions? But then it's not happening. So the environmental literacy and the consciousness, the reorientation, we need to pay more attention to that if we must really adopt all of these in our own climate. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Abiodun. Anybody else? I think I see Brother Augustine's hand up. You may ask your question, brother. Are you there, Brother Augustine?
Yeah, I think we lost him. Hello?
Yeah, I think he's done.
Speaking. So probably it was my own side. And I have a question earlier on anyway to Dr. Toby, and but I just want to react to part of what Dennis and Afolabi has been talking about, which when Yoknyam asks with regards to using bike and classes of people and the financial capability of people. But I thought that Boris Johnson gave, Biden gave Boris Johnson about $6,000 bike. And Boris Johnson, you can see in the newspaper writing it up and down. And that was his gift to him, even anyway, when he visited. And I feel to a great extent that people have an impression that to ride bike, it's lower to you, or it's part of the education that Dr. Toby is trying to talk about. And I was looking at it from the point of view of interest, because what you are doing, for instance, with cycling and bike can also be replicated in the use of use of petrol or other forms of cooking. It can be replicated in forms of cycling. How do we appeal to the interests of the people to be able to teach them on how to recycle things properly? And I can remember even when I got to the UK myself, when my wife wanted to put things properly into the bin, I'm always like, I won't put it properly, because for what? Because for me as a person, why should I sort it for them? And I could remember when the whole idea is like, why should I sort it for them? But at home, you easily sort it because there are things you can sell, some cartons. So when I have bunks of cartons, there are people roaming around who want to pick the cartons. When I have bottles, there are people roaming around. So, and this has been in existence for more than 20, 30 years, even before they started talking about climate change. People are buying bottles separately and recycling rounds. So the whole thing, I try to look at that directs me to the question of Dr. Toby Morakinyo, which has to do with the place of Africa in the global discourse on this climate change, especially when scientists like you, Dr. Toby, are talking, and they are talking about impact. Is it that they put Africa to the place of people who will go and teach later on about what is going on and we educate, or they actually put them at the forefront? Because there are interpretations that they give to most of all these things. Recycling has been in Lagos. Some people live their entire life on picking bottles, some on ions. And so that's where I'm worried that, where are the findings, where are the publications about all this effort being made towards climate change in Africa?
Well, let me quickly react to that. One is Africans are not put at the background in any climate discourse. In fact, I think it's given the data, it's clear that we need more attention, because we are feeling the impact the most. We are just at the receiving end of what is the tragedy of the commons. So, for example, in my core area of study, which is urban climatology, we realize from our research that there is wide data gap in Africa. So, and senior colleagues in the community are challenging me, are challenging others. Okay, so for example, one of my PhD students is taking up the challenge of filling the data gap in Africa. Okay, so we are starting with Lagos. So what I'm trying to say is there is a push on how to reduce the data gap that we have in Africa. There are a lot of initiatives. For example, there is this TAMO, initiative which is installing low-cost hydrometeorological sensor across the continent of Africa with the aim of getting fine-scale data for predictions. Okay, there is a program, a graduate research program funded by, under the funding of the German Ministry of Environment, called WASCAL, and there is a South African version of that called SASCA. Basically, for the WASCAL, is they are training Africans, West Africans, particularly for WASCA, and Southern Africa for SASCA, on climate. Okay, so there is a graduate program, master's program, PhD programs and they have 10 different sites in West Africa. One of the sites is in Futa, which is about a climate system. So students will enroll with fully funded PhD scholarship to study climate systems in Africa and the impact of climate change. So they have enormous publications. One of my colleagues, who was a PhD student in Hong Kong, actually did a lot of work on West African monsoon rain system. And interestingly, some of his outputs are actually were cited in the International Panel of Climate Change Assessment Reports. So they value some of our inputs, they value our data, they recognize that, yes, there's data sparsity in Africa and everyone is working. Africans outside, community, research communities wide, everywhere is working in terms of reducing this data gap and helping Africa to make more informed, data-driven decision in combating the climate change. So that would be my reaction to that.
Thank you very much. And I have a question for, that one has to do with a little bit the position that United Nations, like let's say for instance, it just concluded COP26 and all this. These are international bodies coming at the end of the day with rules and guidelines that will be applicable to everyone to ensure that this global threat is being curtailed. And I can see the contrast, when we talk about when there are global issues like the COVID-19 pandemic, when the developed nations in the West and others want to address the thing, they put the interests of their people to the front. So when it talks about people should use masks, people should isolate themselves, there are funds made available to the people to make life, even businesses that were closed for some times, money were distributed to businesses. But when it comes to, the African nations, or the case of Nigeria, for instance, here's about, they have created a rule from the top that they should use masks and they should isolate themselves. They release soldiers and other people to put people inside the house, no welfare, no concern for the people, and they do whatever. Now, my own concern is this: when the international body comes up with rules to govern global issues of climate change, whatever they come up with, we have leaders who come with Koboko to implement them, and the interest of the people is not even at heart. And that's where one thing I'm trying to come up with. This when the international community comes together and creates some of these laws, like the COP26, for instance, they take into cognizance that this joint between the people and the politicians, or the masses and the people in power who are going to implement it in some other nations. That has to do more with the issue of even literacy, because first of all, you don't educate the people what COVID-19 is. You don't educate the people what climate change is. But you are ready to get soldiers and police and other people to lock them inside the house and to get them to suffocate themselves with masks that they can create from any sort of clothes. So that's the concern that I'm having as an international scholar. What role do you think that the diaspora can play to intervene?
Okay, yeah. So thank you for your question. One, I think the way COVID-19 pandemic was addressed would not be exactly synonymous with any implementation of any action concerning climate change. Reason is because it's, of course, COVID-19 is, climate change is also an emergency, but it's not as, how to say it now, it's not as emergent as COVID-19, for example, in terms of life. Of course, if we compare it to how many lives it has taken, we know that, in fact, climate change has taken more life than COVID-19, okay? Natural hazard is ranking at the same level as weapon of mass destruction in terms of global risk across the world. Yeah, so having said that, I also think that our leaders should, just like the title of this talk is, we need to develop African solutions to our problem. We cannot directly be picking up solutions from, of course, there are some solutions that are useful that we can borrow from abroad, but the implementation of some are just, we have to localize it and look for local solutions to our problem. In terms of if it's happened that which I don't think it will, if they should begin to enforce certain hard and fast rules in terms of climate action, and say, for example, can the United Nations say today that no more use of fossil fuel? That would not be possible, because, for example, one of the issues that happened in the COP26 was the China trying to tell the West that there was a discourse around the word facing out and face down. Okay, so you want people to, there's a difference between facing out fossil fuel, the use of fossil fuel, and facing down. So one is gradual, one is just an immediate shutdown. So China is not going to agree to that. So there is the role of negotiation is open for negotiation. Countries can decide to subscribe or not. I don't think any of our leaders would immediately subscribe to shutting down of power stations, for example, when you don't have, you have not successfully transit to another power source. I also saw that in terms of the impact that could have on the economy, I also think this is an opportunity for Africans. Say for example, the large wind farm that I showed a picture of in Morocco, it was funded actually by the by the European Union. Okay, so because we have this massive natural resource, we could be in the future be for example, just like China, you know that you can get companies are going to site their stations in China. Their companies, their manufacturing facility in China, because they know they will have cheap power, cheap labor, and all of that. So I see that in the future, it's possible that in the future, Africa will become the hub for cheap renewable manufacturing, or renewable energy powered manufacturing, such that would even improve our economy. So if we can, for example, we can have these large wind farms, we begin to generate lots of energy, companies can begin to site their manufacturing with us, and that will in turn boost our economy. We know we cannot rely on fossil fuel forever. In fact, even without climate change, we know we are depleting in the resource, and eventually it's going to dry up. So I think there is an opportunity for us from this renewable energy resource that we have to even boost our economy. So this is what I will say to that.
Yeah, and to round up, I think we are concluding the conversation because it can continue on and on.
Yeah.
And so we have exceeded the time. We have so much to talk about. We hope that there will be a second episode. it's a little bit new topic to a lot of people. It has nothing to do with race. It has nothing to do with identity. It has nothing to do with gender. Only few people will show interest, in topics like this. And we need to encourage people that climate change, like I've been sending the publicity, come and attend climate, like people like climate change. You have entered this Oyibo thing, because the question is that what concern if we have coming to talk about riding bicycle or other stuff, maybe people would have come. But the whole idea of climate change. But we thank our speakers who have come to grace this occasion. We really love the perspective, the whole thing. We would have loved to continue with what we can say we found in Dr. Biodun's paper, which is skepticism towards the West. The fear that the West could use the climate change as a means of coming again to Africa. And we can talk about that continuously, because that's consciousness, that skeptical attitude is there. Because even as Dr. Toby talked about whirlwind and all these things, where are the technology going to come from? Where are the installations going to come from? And then the whole idea of let's go and save them again. But the whole thing is we have the second episode of this, and we hope that at that episode, we're going to have all the people from the industry, not just from the academia, And I must correct Dr. Dennis, though you took back your word. The industry depends on the academia, and then the academia pass it to the industry to have something to actually work on. So, it goes hand in hand. But the academia also depends on the industry, because if you do the talking without the walking, as you have advised us today, you will just end up doing everything that you have done. It will die in the library. So we thank Dr. Toby, we thank Dennis, we thank Dr. Afolabi, and on behalf of African Researchers Network team, for your time. And then we hope that we'll continue this conversation and wish you a lovely evening. We thank all the participants, most especially our friends from who spend their data and their time from Nigeria, from other places like Dr. Simiri, like Dr. Benga Shodari, who has been here, Emeka Bungo, and we thank. So we're going to send the videos to you all, and then we all wish you a lovely evening. Have a great day, and bye. Thanks, Yoknyam, the colleague.
Thank you, everyone. Good meeting you. Thank you for the work that you do.
Thank you, everyone. Great to be here.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.